The People Against Petrol and Paraffin Price Increase, or PAPPI, say that South African citizens will no longer stand by and accept high fuel prices. PAPPI, who started the campaign, or this fuel price campaign, must fall in June, say they're planning for a national shutdown later on this month. The organisation says it called on South Africans to switch off their engines for 10 minutes earlier this week, and that hundreds of thousands of citizens actually did so. Joining us from our Durban studio is Visvin Reddy, the national convener of PAPPI, and good to have you, Visvin. Thank you very, very much for joining us here on the programme.
Thank you, Leanne. It's a pleasure.
And with me in the Johannesburg studio to also talk about this issue, we've got Wayne Duvenage, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the organisation Undoing Tax Abuse, or OUTA, who says a shutdown and protests will not bring any change or relief from the fuel prices. Wayne, thank you. It's good to have you in studio.
Right.
So, Wayne, basically, I'm just going to carry on reading a little bit about a background into what you're saying. You're also saying that people are getting far too emotional about things that are out of their hands. I suppose we do get emotional about these things, Wayne, because every single month it's costing us more and more and more. And as people are saying, the poor are getting poorer. How do we handle this?
Well, it's this is law, and we need to be emotional. We are going to have to, and you see what's happening now is when people get emotional, then it spills out into protest action of this nature. What we want to caution against is that this is a long-term fight. Where we are now with the fuel levy and the road accident fund combined at about R5.20 per litre of fuel, which means that every time you fill up your tank, a 60-litre tank, you're going to be spending about 330 Rand just before you start paying for the actual fuel price. And that is a serious concern. And what happened was some time ago, when the fuel price did come down a lot, government took the opportunity to push those two taxes, and more so the road accident fund, as much as they can. And they've pushed that envelope too far. And we warned and said that when the fuel price goes up and the Rand weakens again, it's going to bite you. And this is what's happening right now. So what we do need to do, and the long-term journey, which is what OUTA has been on for a number of years, and this year specifically, is to go back to government now and say, in this next tax increase, you cannot push taxes, that especially those that impact on the economy, such as the fuel levy and the road accident fund, any further, because you are damaging this economy. What we need is greater efficiency in government as opposed to increased taxes. The other part of the fuel levy, fuel price, is something we can't control.
That's out of our hands.
Yeah, I mean that's the Rand and the crude oil price. There's nothing much we can do there. And then there's about 17% which goes to retail margins and wholesale margins, and there's not much you can do there. So it's these two big taxes, and the one we really have a concern about is this road accident fund. It is being plundered. I'm
going to pause you there because I want to talk about this road accident fund, but I want to bring Visvin into the conversation because he's taking a little bit of a different stance to you. You're saying these things, some of them are out of our hands and we shouldn't go and do the protest thing. Visvin, on the other hand, is saying, no, enough. National shutdown is the only option we've got. Visvin, talk to us. Firstly, let's talk about your organisation, PAPPI. When was it formed? Out of what? Let's get to the bottom of that.
PAPPI was formed on the 6th of June this year when fuel prices was increased by up to 85 cents a litre, and it brought our fuel costs in this country to the highest it's been in years. And this has sent shockwaves around the country, and ordinary South Africans were saying that something needs to be done. We then started to do some research into this, and we found, and we are not in disagreement with OUTA, we agree that fuel prices must be brought down. It's just how we do it. We believe that we are ratepayers, we are taxpayers in the country, we elect a government, and the way fuel levies are determined in this country, it's determined by government through the Central Energy Fund. The CEF determines these costs. 38% of what we pay for fuels goes to general taxes, general fuel levy, and the road accident fund. I'm not going to repeat what Wayne said about the plundering of the road accident fund. We cannot accept this. Now, it's important to understand that Parliament is a creation of the people. We elect Parliament. And we are not here to make excuses for government. Government needs to take into consideration the impact that these increases have on ordinary South Africans, the impact it has on the people of this country. High fuel prices affects all of us, especially the most vulnerable in our community. To just increase fuel prices because of crude oil price increases is not acceptable. Let me explain. 6 years ago, your crude oil prices was almost double what it is today. The rand was even weaker than what it is today. But your fuel prices was less than 10 rand per litre. Why is this? It's because our taxes in the country, the government has found an easy way to tax the people. Now you increase your fuel levies. The other factor which we need to consider is the question of Sasol fuels.
Yeah.
Sasol is a South African-based company. We've spent billions in developing Sasol. We should be producing our own fuel in the country, which has not been happening. Or if it is so, we can show you that Sasol fuels will cost around 8 rand a litre. So fuel prices, if it's deregulated, then you will ensure that there is competition. When you bring down the price of Sasol fuels, other oil companies will automatically bring their fuel prices down because of the competition. Competition is healthy for the consumer.
Okay.
The other thing that we are concerned about is the selling off of our strategic fuel reserves. This was done in a very clandestine manner. The previous minister informed us that this was done as a rotation of stock. The new minister says, no, it was not rotation of stock, it was an outright sale. We sold off our strategic reserves in the country, and those reserves can be used to cushion fuel prices in the event you have sudden high spikes in the crude oil prices, the international markets. Now we don't have any reserves. We are exposed as a country. We are vulnerable. And somebody needs to account for this.
Okay.
There has to be a commission of inquiry set up to find out exactly who was responsible and why they sold off our strategic reserves.
Okay, all right, Visvin, I think you've put quite a few points on the table there, and we'll just get a little bit of comment from Wayne here in the studio as well. In fact, I did see a release coming through from the ANC last night, and they're also voicing their concern about the petrol price increase, ironically. Basically, this is from the ANC. They're saying the ANC-led government must mitigate the short and long-term effects of the fuel price for South Africans and our economy. We call on our government to increase our petrol reserves. That's what Visvin was saying.
Absolutely.
Seriously consider freezing or decreasing the fuel levy, and to further stabilise governance and finances at the Road Accident Fund, Petrol SA, and the Central Energy Fund. That's what the ANC is actually calling for.
Well, the same ruling party that pushed those taxes up and were warned not to do so a number of years ago. So now they're taking the introspective look and say, oops, we made a mistake. And this is the reality of the problem that we have here, that it's hard to now go and undo that, especially when you have a government that is cash-strapped. They need all the taxes. If you go and try and reduce that, I mean, the fuel levy and the road accident fund combined bring in about 120 billion rand a year to government, and government's not going to go and reduce that. It's had to go and push up VAT recently. So look, it's got to do something. What we are saying is a couple of things. The first thing is no tax increase on fuel next year. In fact, if you can bring it down, because they do it every year. Though if they want to do it in the mid-year, that's great. We must force that issue. But what we need is accountability on those fuel stock reserves that were sold off a couple of years ago. Jomo Peterson, the ex-minister, needs to be held to account for that. We need to see people tried and taken to court on that matter. And again, we see no accountability. There's something so fundamentally wrong that happened there. And every time this happens, no one is held to account. So charges need to be brought on the fuel reserves, because that cost this country billions of rands and has now put us in this predicament. And yes, taxes must come down. What this is all about, though, Leanne, is it's a long-term strategy, staying the course, engaging with government and putting them under pressure. Protests they do work. They're short-term interventions, as we saw with e-tolls. There were protests. We blocked the highways, but that didn't stop the e-toll matter. It's going to come to an end shortly because of the long-term strategies of putting government under pressure on their own policies.
So I want to talk a little bit about the Road Accident Fund, because this is a big chunk that is going from our pockets to the Road Accident Fund. We're going to take a break. When we return, Visvin has mentioned the Road Accident Fund. You have mentioned the Road Accident Fund. I think for South Africans, just to ponder as we take this break, and when we come back, this will be under discussion. The Road Accident Fund levy on a litre of petrol increased from 45 cents. That's what we were paying in 2008, 45 cents. It is now R1.93 this year. That is a whopping 330% increase. And the reality is, this money is going into an organization that is actually insolvent. And that's very, very worrying. Let's take a break. We'll talk about this and more afterwards. Stay tuned.